the man to beat me haven't been born yet.
Feel the presence of a prophet that God sent you from heaven. Open you open eyes, realize you in the game. Fighting fire with fire, but our fire's blue flame. It's the same game, different name. Better take an aim, better go make a move or it's gonna always stay the same. Revolution, revolution, revolution. Kill some pollution. Revolution, revolution, revolution. That's the solution. Revolution, revolution.
Terminating the Department of Interior is a good idea because it's an unconstitutional agency. This is a states' rights and 10th Amendment issue. Under Paul's plan, the Interior's necessary functions will be transitioned to the states and to the people in a tiered progression that will give them more power over their own resources. The red areas on this map show that the federal government claims ownership over nearly 30% of land in the U.S., primarily in 13 western states. That's over 1 million square miles. The Constitution prohibits the federal government from owning land, except under very narrow, enumerated circumstances outlined in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. How is it fair that Nevada is over 80 or 90% federally controlled, yet New York is less than 1% federally owned? The states are treated unequally, and the western states are at a disadvantage. Federal ownership restrictions include control over land use, water, and resources like timber and grazing areas. The Department of Interior maintains power over other states' resources too. Resources like oil, gas, coal, uranium, minerals, metals, and other ores. Natural resources from the land are the source of most wealth creation, and the Interior profits from it. Why should taxpayer money be spent on the out-of-control Department of Interior that has zero accountability? The Interior makes big profits. Their budget is $12 billion a year, but they also receive over $20 billion a year in permit and royalty fees, just from gas and oil alone. Less than $2 billion, or 10% of that money, flows back to the states. The Department of Interior pretends to protect the environment, but they don't give a hoot about health or safety. For example, the Interior Subagency, the Mineral Management Service, waived BP Oil's environmental impact statement only 11 days prior to the gusher in the Gulf of Mexico. They also removed the requirement for acoustic switches that may have averted the BP disaster. The Gulf states got left holding the bag and are suffering the environmental damage and absorbing the economic costs. Another example of corruption within the Department of Interior is the heavy influence of industry insiders like Monsanto. The Interior Subagency, the Bureau of Land Management, contracts with a company named Tetra Tech to write the B.L.M's environmental impact statements and regional management plans that set land use policy. Hugh Grant, no, not the actor, but the CEO of Monsanto, sits on Tetra Tech's board of directors, wielding influence. Monsanto has been authorized by the Interior Subagency, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, to plant genetically engineered crops on wildlife refuge lands across 28 states. The purpose of planting Monsanto's lab-engineered crops is to instill confidence in dangerous disease-causing frankenfoods. In yet another scheme, the Department of Interior abuses its power through the Endangered Species Act in order to grab land, water, and resources. The Endangered Species Act was ushered in through 5 international and United Nations treaties, and it is closely aligned with the United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development Program. The Department of Interior's crackdown on land use through the Endangered Species Act has failed to save even one single species. Corrupt science combined with environmental extremism has resulted in staggering economic losses. One of the first examples of this took place in 1973, when the Tennessee Valley Authority had completed 95% of the construction on the Tellico Dam that was interrupted by the endangered snail darter fish. Saving species at all costs stalled the construction for years. And it was later determined that the snail darters are abundant. The biggest endangered species scam is in California, where the Interior has cut farm irrigation water to farmers over the tiny delta smelt. The decrease in delta smelt is due to death caused by high ammonium levels resulting from nearby towns flushing partially treated sewage into the delta. Fixing the sewage problem is a better solution than cutting water supplies to farmers. Our last example of abuse of the Endangered Species Act takes place in Montana and Idaho, where the Department of Interior unleashed dangerous wild grizzly bears that threaten human life, as well as caribou, moose, elk, and deer populations. An Idaho man who shot and killed a grizzly that threatened 4 of his children faced a year in prison and a fine of $50,000. The Department of Interior denies property owners the right to use and develop their own land. If the government really wants to save certain species, it should be based on sound science, and landowners should be compensated instead of penalized. In conclusion, there are many reasons why the Department of Interior should be abolished. It is corrupt, incompetent, and derives great profit from insider deals.